for everybody. It ain't 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 for everybody. Yeah, many you call, but few get chosen. Matthew 22:14. My righteousness gonna exceed that of the Pharisees.
If you're looking for high quality clothing at affordable costs, check out PeculiarApparel.com. My name is Dawad.
And I'm Shayar, and we are the owners of Peculiar Apparel. All of our products are made with 100% natural fabrics, no mixed materials.
We have t-shirts for the man, woman, and child. These can be purchased with or without fringes.
Our women's line of t-shirts currently do not include fringes, but if that's something you desire, send us a DM at peculiarapparel_ on Instagram, or send us an email at help@peculiarapparel.com.
So once again, that is PeculiarApparel.com.
Peculiar Apparel for peculiar people.
Shalom, shalom, family. First and foremost, we're going to start by giving all praises, honor, and glory to the Most High God, whose true name is Yahweh. We're going to do so in the name of his beloved son, Yahushua. Tonight, the lesson is going to be titled, Jesus Taught What Was in the Old Testament. It's going to be by yours truly through the Spirit and power of the Most High. I'm joined by my esteemed colleagues in the faith. My brother Ezra Christopher, the brother Pat, and also the brother Hurt. He's back on here. Brother Hurt, you want to touch on anything before we get into it?
Just want to say shalom, family, and the water for everybody tuning in. I'm pretty sure the brother already gave all praise, honor, and glory to the Most High God, Yahweh Bashem, Yahweh Shai, but ain't nothing wrong with saying it again. And the water to the brothers joining the stage, brother Pat, brother Ezra, and always my brother Aaron. And if you haven't already, if you could go ahead and like the video if you're watching, if you tuned in. Share and also comment to let us know that you're here to congregate with us. And all praise to the Most High.
Con. So yeah, like as a brother said, it ain't nothing wrong with continuing to give all praises, honor, and glory to the Most High. So, shalom, family. And again, I'll start by saying all praises, honor, and glory to the Most High God, whose name is Yahweh. And I'll do so in the name of his beloved son, Yahushua, who many call Yeshua or Jesus Christ, or, different renderings of his name. But we're talking about the son of the Most High God, right? But the lesson for tonight is Jesus taught what was in the Old Testament, right? And tonight we're going to go through a few examples of what the Messiah is saying, and we're going to show it in the Old Testament, quote unquote, because I had a conversation, or I was listening to a conversation, I should say, and it was a so-called Christian that was making a point about, he was like, do you really think that Jesus was going in their synagogues and going around to the disciples and teaching them what's in the Old Testament? Well, why wouldn't he? Because, again, like how would it look for the anointed one, the Messiah that we've been waiting on as a nation, to come around and be teaching something that's not written in the Word of God, or something that God, he never spoke about, right? That would actually go against what the scriptures say, and also what the Messiah says himself, because he said, Moses has spoken of him. He also speaks about the fact that he doesn't teach his own doctrine, but he speaks that of what the Father gives him, roughly paraphrasing. That's in the book of John, the 7th chapter, right? But we're going to show what the Messiah is teaching, and we're going to show it in the so-called Old Testament, or the Tanakh, which includes the Torah, the writings, and the prophets, right? So we're going to get my screen shared, and brother, if you can, I need you to read for me. Let me see, I'll pull it up. The book of Luke, chapter 18, right? I'm going to share my screen momentarily. And you can let me know if I need to blow the screen up more.
Check it out.
Con.
Con.
Yeah, and you could just read Luke 18, verse 1 through 3.
Con. This is Luke chapter 18 and verse 1. And he spake a parable unto them to this end, that men ought always to pray and not to faint, saying, there was in a city a judge, which feared not God, neither regarded man. And there was a widow in that city, and she came unto him, saying, avenge me of mine adversary.
And were you reading that in the KJV?
Yes, sir.
That's cool. Can you grab it in the NET?
NET, con.
I mean, it says pretty much the same thing, but I've been using the NET because it lines up pretty good with the language, and it reads a little bit more smooth and clearer.
All right, con.
The water.
Luke 18, chapter 18, verse 1. Then Jesus told them a parable to show them they should always pray and not lose heart. He said, in a certain city there was a judge, and neither feared God nor respected people. There was also a widow in that city who kept coming to him and saying, give me justice against my adversary.
So Yahushua gives a parable to emphasize the fact that we should always pray and not lose heart, meaning, to not give up. And the parable includes a woman that's asking, for justice against her adversary. Now let's see what happens, right? Let's continue on. You can read verse 6, verse 4 through 6.
Con. Start at verse 4. For a while he refused, but later on he said himself, thou I neither fear God nor have regard for people. Yet because this widow keeps on bothering me, I will give her justice, or in the end she will wear me out by her unending pleas. And the Lord said, listen to what the unrighteous judge says.
So, matter of fact, read 7 on down to 8, just to cap it out.
All right, con. Verse 7. Won't God give justice to his chosen ones who cry out to him day and night? Will he delay long to help them? I tell you, he will give them justice speedily. Nevertheless, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on earth?
So Yahushua shows in this particular situation, using this parable of how the woman, she kept faith and belief, in justice being done despite the circumstances that the sister was in, because, she showed how she kept asking for justice daily. And he asked, talking about Yahushua, he asked, when the Son of Man returns, which is the Lord himself, Yahushua, will there be faith, or will he find faith? Because this is how we're supposed to be. We're supposed to, continuously be desiring and asking for justice, and for us to be avenged, right? That's not an evil thing, contrary to popular belief, right? And the scriptures teach that. Even the apostle Paul, he said, it's a righteous thing with God to recompense evil upon those that cause you tribulation, right? Roughly paraphrasing. But again, like, these things, they're taught in the quote unquote Old Testament, or the scriptures. This is not nothing new, right? This is not a new concept. So let's actually show this in the so-called Old Testament. And if any of y'all brothers got any points, y'all could definitely hop in. But let's go to the book of Psalm, chapter 10. And you can read verse 15 on down to 18.
Con. You want me to stay in the NT?
Con.
All right, con. Psalms chapter 10, starting at verse 15. Break the arm of the wicked and the evil man. Hold him accountable for his wicked deeds, which he thought he would not discover. Slakia, which he thought you would not discover. The Lord rules forever. The nations are driven out of his land. Lord, you have heard the request of the oppressed. You make them feel secure because you listen to their prayer. You defend the fatherless and oppressed so that mere mortals may no longer terrorize them.
Con. So right here, it's a psalm about, when you look at the top, it's a psalm about the wicked oppressing others. I want to say, let me look. Yeah, it says a prayer for the overthrow of the wicked, right? So again, this is going into the wicked oppressing others. And it said that the Most High hears the prayers of the oppressed and that he'll hold the wicked accountable. You know, this is constantly touched on throughout the entire Tanakh, or the so-called Old Testament. You even see that in Isaiah, when the Lord said, I love justice and I hate robbery for burnt offering, roughly paraphrase, right? Well, let's go to the book of Proverbs. You see Proverbs chapter 28. And you can read verse 4 to 5.
I got a point
This
to
is
make
Proverbs
also.
chapter 28, starting at verse 4.
Salakia, Khan, if you got a point, you can bring it out, King.
Yeah. After y'all finish reading Proverbs, I'll bring out a scripture. Go ahead, Kings.
Khan, go ahead out.
Oh, no, Proverbs chapter 28 and verse 4. Those who forsake the law praise the wicked, but those who keep the law contend with them. Evil people do not understand justice, but those who seek the Lord understand it all.
Khan, you know, so it says that them that forsake the law praise the wicked. And when I believe when you go into the word praise, that's dealing with they highlight them, right? But it says them that forsake the law, they praise the wicked. Them that forsake the law praise the wicked, but them that keep the law contend with them. And then it says evil people don't understand justice, but if you seek the Most High, you know, you'll understand all of these things, right? You know, and again, that's inclusive of Torah, the prophets, and the writings. You know, if you understand the scriptures and you seek the Most High in that particular way, you'll understand the character of the Most High, because the Most High is just. He's holy, just like his law. I think that's in Romans 7. You know, when it says the law is holy, just, and good. You know, what's the root word of justice is just, right? But my brother, you say you had a point.
Yeah, to kind of just
not me.
harp on like what you said about not evil, you know, to want justice for evil, right? So got Isaiah 34. Let's start at verse 1.
You got it, King.
You said Isaiah 34. Call it one more time, Salah.
Yeah, Isaiah 34 verses 1. We're gonna start from there, and then we're gonna read from 1 to 3, and then we're gonna jump to 8.
I can't hear him. He going in and out.
No, I can. Can y'all hey, brother Hurt, can you hear him? I can hear him pretty good.
Khan, I can hear him. That's probably your connection, brother Pat.
Yeah. Probably.
Yeah, Khan, yeah. Everybody they can hear brother Ezra. Or you might Pat, you might have to go in and come out.
All right.
But Khan, Ezra, you said 34, start at 1 and read on down to where?
Read to 3, and then we're gonna jump to 8.
Khan, for sure. All right, so this is the book of Isaiah, chapter 34, starting at verse 1. Come near, ye nations, to hear, and hearken, ye people, let the earth hear, and all that is therein, the world and all things that come forth of it. For the indignation of the Lord is upon all nations, and his fury upon all their armies. He hath utterly destroyed them. He hath delivered them to the slaughter. Their slain also shall be cast out, and their stink shall come up out of their carcasses, and the mountains shall be melted with their blood.
You see that? So pretty much the Lord is talking about bringing judgment and vengeance on the nations, right? So like, you know, the brother Aaron was going into, you know, it's a righteous thing to recompense evil. So jump down to verse 8. Let's see who the Lord is recompensing evil for, because you mentioned, you know, he's going to avenge his chosen, right? And most likely that widow, we all know, is talking about Israel. So go into it.
Khan. It's the book of Isaiah, chapter 34, verse 8. For it is the day of the Lord's vengeance, in the year of recompenses for the controversy of Zion.
You see that? So it said, is the Lord's vengeance, right, to recompense, the controversy of Zion, right, his chosen people, right? So, like the brother brought out, and this is prophetic. This haven't happened yet. So, like the brother said, it is a righteous thing in the Most High God's eyes to recompense evil, right? So, just to harp on your point. Go ahead, you got it.
Yeah, and Isaiah 34, that's one of my favorite chapters. Yeah, that was a mighty point. But yeah, again, just continuing on. Let's touch on one more aspect of Yahushua, going teaching on justice, right? Let's go to the book of Matthew. And Pat, you can you hear?
Yeah, I can hear him now.
Can you pull up Matthew 23:23 in the LSB?
In the LSB.
And I got it on the screen. If it's big enough to see.
All right, yeah, I can see that. Matthew chapter 23 and verse 23. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you tithe mint and deal and coming and have neglected the weighted provisions of the law, justice, mercy, faithfulness. But these are the things you should have done without neglecting the others.
So Yahushua said the scribes and the Pharisees, they neglected the weightier provisions of the law. And then I think King James Version, it says they neglected the weightier matters, right? But the weightier provisions of the law included mercy, faithfulness, and also justice, right? And again, that's, it's just bearing witness to the fact that, throughout the Bible, it teaches the importance of justice being done on the earth, right? The brother went into it in Isaiah 34, dealing with the Lord's recompense, for the controversy of Zion. And when you look at Isaiah 34, that's the destruction of the nations. All praise to the Most High that the brother went into it. But again, we see that throughout the Psalms, throughout the Torah, etc. Right? But again, this is just another showing that Yahushua, he teaches, or he taught what was in the Old Testament. He didn't come and say, well, yeah, because a lot of people, they like to go to Matthew 5. And really that would be a great lesson in and of itself, to just go through all of Matthew 5 and shows how it doesn't go against what's in the scriptures, right? But you have a lot of, so-called Christians, I like to call them. They'll go to Matthew 5 and they'll say, well, look, brother, Jesus said, it was said of old time, but I say unto you, and then they'll act like he's just doing away with what was written already. But what the Lord is doing is he's bringing emphasis and he's bringing clarity to what was written, and he's elucidating and bringing out the truth and what the Lord said, from old time, right? But I
wanted to bring out a point too, to harp on that as well.
Can't bring it out.
Yeah, just to harp on that, especially keeping the law, like you mentioned, the Old Testament, like for example, Passover, right? I mean, Passover is literally, a feast day that's celebrating a slaughter of another nation, and Yahushua partake of that. So going back into the mindset that he had, when he was amongst his people, just shows that, when it comes to justice, because mind you, the Egyptian captivity, right? That was justice when the Lord delivered us, right? And the fact that he's celebrating, he's honoring that justice as well when you look at it from that perspective, just to, harp on that.
Absolutely.
I want to make a point too, Aaron. I kind of made a point on that, I think, in the last lesson, about how when that verbiage he's using, he said, you've heard it been said. He's not saying that it's written, but I say to you, because this is how people in modern day Christianity, this is what they do with Christ and his words and his teachings. They make it seem like he's teaching against what was already written. But he's saying, hey, I know you've heard that it's been said. So that's like a rumor. People going around talking and saying stuff about this is how you do it. You know, that's an opinion. That's not what's thus says the Lord or what was written. But Khan, all praises. Y'all keep cooking.
Con all praises, and that's a great point also, because um a lot of times throughout that Matthew 5, he does say you've heard it's been said, right? So a lot of things were orally passed around, and that was one of the issues that plagued our people during the time of Yahushua, because we went according to tradition and we set aside the actual word of God in a lot of instances. You even see Yahushua touch on that in Matthew 15, and also I think Mark 7. All right, so that's a beautiful point. But let's continue on. Let's go to the book of Matthew chapter 5, and I'll go to Matthew 5 and 17. And Ak, you can read 5:17 through 18.
Can I be heard?
Khan, yes, sir.
All right. Matthew chapter 5, verse 17. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish these things, but to fulfill them. I tell you the truth, until heaven and earth pass away, not the smallest letter or stroke of letter will pass from the law until everything takes place.
Khan. So Yahushua makes it clear that he didn't come to abolish the law, and the prophets, but he came to fulfill the things that were written within them. And he also said that nothing could pass from the Tanakh, which is inclusive of the Torah, the writings, and the prophets. But he said nothing could pass from that until everything is taking place, because I believe it's in the book of Isaiah. The Lord, he said, that his word wouldn't come back void. So these things, of course, they can't pass away because they have to happen, right? You have a lot of people, that walk around and they'll be like, well, like you'll point out blatant prophecy. Like I've even heard, I think it's in like the prophecy about in Isaiah 65 about the Lord coming back, with fire and chariots. Like just blatant stuff that hasn't happened. You'll just hear people say, well, that's, or they'll say it happened spiritually or something like that, or they'll try to find some type of way to just flat out just do away with, something that the Lord clearly said. But even Yahushua said that, and this is his, his first few sentences, as far as, teaching, because if you read the top of the chapter, he's actually, he's in front of a bunch of people and he starts, he's starting to teach, right? And Matthew 5, Matthew 6, and Matthew 7 is oftentimes called the Sermon on the Mount. So this is the Lord, basically just beginning his I guess sermon, if you will, right? And one of the first things he starts to say, right after the, blessed are the meek and etc. One of the first things he says after that is, don't think I came to abolish the law or the prophets. So he's coming out the gate and telling you, hey, I'm not coming to do away with the law. But people will often say, and there are people that claim to follow him, of course, not, like the true, messianic believers, but I'm talking about people that claim that they're Christians. They'll say, hey, he nailed it to the cross. He paid the price. He said, it is finished. But the Lord said out of his own mouth that he didn't come to do away with it. So how could he come to not do away with it, but do away with it? It just
make no sense, man.
Kind of make no sense.
I want to bring out the point too with that, man. I definitely want to make a good point too, because you brought out about how he didn't come to abolish the law. Like literally, the chapter prior. Let's go there, Matthew chapter 4. I want to bring out a point there too.
You want KJV?
It don't really matter. But if you can bring out a KJV, that's fine. Because there's a point I wanted to bring out.
God.
Because literally the first thing that he does, being tempted by Satan, was literally call out the law of Moses.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So Matthew 4:4.
God, it's the book of Matthew. Oh, you got it, Pat?
God, I got it.
God.
It's the book of Matthew, chapter 4 and verse 6. But he answered and said, "It is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God."
Now what proceeded out of the mouth of God, the law. Let's see what Yahushua is quoting. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 8. Right, because this is the law. That's literally the first thing that comes out of his mouth. Live by every word of the Most High. So how is he not teaching the law, man? Right, Deuteronomy chapter 8, and let's keep going. I think it's let's keep reading.
I know he's quoting it from here.
Yeah, Khan.
Yeah, verse 3.
Verse 3, go ahead, bring it up.
Book of Deuteronomy, chapter 8 and verse 3. And he humbled thee, and suffered thee to hunger and feed thee with manna, which thou knowest not, neither did thy fathers know, that he might make thee know that man doeth not live by bread only, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of the Lord doeth man live.
You see that? So it says by every word that proceed out of the mouth of God. And this is in the law. This is what Yahushua was quoting. So that's another cut to prove that he was teaching the law. How you?
Khan, beautiful point out the water. Yeah, and it's so many instances of of the Lord teaching congruent or in step with what the law and the prophets say. And we really could sit here and go through all of those instances all night, right? But let's continue back in Matthew 5. You could read I'm gonna put it back on the screen. Matthew 5 verses 19 through 20.
This is the book of Matthew, chapter 5 and verse 19. So anyone who breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do so will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. Whoever obeys them and teaches others to do so will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you, unless your righteousness goes beyond that of the experts in the law and the Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven.
God. So the Lord said that if you break the least of the commandments or the least of the commands and teach others to do so, then you'll be called least in the kingdom. Meaning you'll be made nothing or insignificant in rank. When you go into the Greek language. So basically, you're not gonna go into the kingdom, right? But this is further when you read verse 20. Because he said that if your righteousness doesn't go beyond the experts of the law, and the Pharisees, then you won't enter into the kingdom. But let's read it in a simpler translation. Let's pull up Matthew 5, and if you cannot, can you read 19 verse 20? I'm gonna pull it up on the screen in the CEV.
Verse 19. Check law. In the law, and teach others to do the same, you will be the least important person in the kingdom of heaven. But if you obey and teach others its commands, you will have an important place in the kingdom. You must obey God's commands better than the Pharisees and the teachers of the law. Obey them. If you don't, I promise you, you will never get into the kingdom of heaven.
And that's plain. So again, what the Lord is getting at is that if you don't adequately keep the law of God, you know, according to Mashiach himself, you know, that you won't enter into the kingdom. You know, the CEV said, I promise you will never get into the kingdom of heaven. And I know that all of us on this call, as well as a lot of us on the stream, we could clearly read that in the Old Testament, that, you know, if you don't keep the commandments, you will not get into the kingdom. You're not going to inherit the kingdom. You're not going to be saved. That's not going to happen, right? Let's continue on. Let's show another parallel. Let's go to the book of Psalm 119.
No, but that was a good parallel because the Lord did destroy, you know, our forefathers and, you know, in the wilderness. They didn't enter into the land of Israel, which is, you know, the kingdom.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because like even when you read in the book of Hebrews, I want to say the 3rd chapter, the writer, he talks about how the Most High, he was we provoked him, and you know he was angry with us and our forefathers. We didn't enter into that rest, right? So that's, again, just bearing witness to the fact that the Most High, he's not going to be dealing with you if you don't keep the commandments. The Lord Yahweh Shah teaches that, and the so-called Old Testament teaches that. You know, he doesn't come on, you know, and go to the disciples and the Jews and things like that and say, well, listen, you know, just believe in me. You know, just come to me. You don't got to do it like they like to use. I think it's in Matthew 11 where it says, you know, come to me, you that are heavy laden, and take upon my yoke. For my yoke is light. And they'll be like, yeah, well, yeah, you just come to Jesus. You don't got to keep that law. You know, just believe on him and everything will be okay. But he clearly goes into the, you know, to the fact that you will not get into the kingdom if you don't obey God's instruction. So again, we about to hammer home that point. First, let's go to the book of Psalm 119, and let me share my screen. You can read Psalm 119, 155.
This is the book of Psalms, chapter 119, verse 155. The wicked have no chance for deliverance, for they do not seek your statutes.
You know, so it says the wicked don't have a chance for deliverance or being saved. When you look at that particular word, that's detailing salvation, right? So they have no chance of being saved, you know, because they don't seek the Most High statutes. When you look at that word, that's used for the word for, it's the Hebrew word ki, which means because of or in regards to. So for this reason, is basically saying they don't have salvation, right? And that reason is they don't seek the Lord's statutes, right? But let's read it in a simpler translation. I like looking at you know, very just elementary school translations, because I want to put a fact on y'all. And again, like a lot of the people we speak to, and I'm sure a lot of the people y'all speak to, they'll more than likely believe that the law was nailed to the cross, as my brother Block said, right? Like they'll teach that you don't got to keep the law, but they are probably of, you know, the average quote unquote American that can't read and comprehend on a 12th grade level, and that's what the KJV is written at. It's written at a 12th grade level, and so you have so many people opening up the KJV and they're building so many just false doctrines on it, and it's not the KJV's fault, but it's just that the people, they don't understand what they're reading, you know. And so I think I do think that it's important that we go into you know, these simpler translations, the language. That's something I want to touch on, you know, maybe at a later date, you know. But certain methodology and looking at translations and you know, the languages and stuff like that, that's really important, you know, for this walk, and also explaining these things to our people, because we've been beaten over the head and indoctrinated, with falsehoods. You know what I'm saying? But not to go on a tangent, but we can go to what I say, Psalm 119.
Yeah, you was gonna read it in another translation.
Found another translation. Yeah, the brother heard. Did you want to bring something out?
You gonna bring a point out, King? Because I mean, if anything, I was gonna bring another point out as well. Just going into what you was mentioning about the translation.
Yeah. I think my brother heard. I'll pass it to you in a second. I think brother Hurdy want to bring
Yeah,
something.
go ahead, Hurt.
Just to make a point to like everything that was just being spoken on as far as like the Messiah, Yahushua, he wasn't saying like, hey, you ain't gotta do all this stuff. Just follow me, just listen to me. And this is the problem. This is the problem that we run into with you, where you have a lot of people that reject the New Testament. A lot of people reject the Messiah off of this understanding, because what they'll say is, man, y'all idol worshipers. Y'all idol worshipers. And when you think about it in that perspective, I would say it's borderline idolatry, but it's not borderline idolatry. It is idolatry. People start to replace the Most High God with the Messiah, and say that he came and taught something different, and now you don't have to listen to what the Most High God said. So he brought something new for you to follow. And so all we got to do is follow him, and we're going to be saved. So basically, you have just swapped gods. And that's crazy when you think about it like that. But beautiful lesson so far, King.
All praises and beautiful point. Yeah, we gonna read it in this translation. Then brother Ezra, I'm gonna pass it right to you. Brother Pat, if you can read Psalm 119, 155 in the CEV.
God, this is 119, 155 in the CEV. Evil people won't obey you, and so they have no hope being saved.
And that's plain right there. It's clearly saying that if you don't obey the Most High God's instruction, you have no hope of being saved. But brother Ezra, you want to bring something out?
Yeah, to kind of just that's a good point. Just going into the different translations and why we got to be and why we got to do that, because like you mentioned, and the thing about a lot of these new translations is playing upon tables as well. Like there's not a game to be played because of the old English, so I just definitely feel like going into different translations is definitely extremely important, because there's just games that can't be played, man. Like even right here, we just read it, evil people want to obey you, and so they have no hope of being saved. You see that? So I mean, hey man, we got to go into these different translations. I know my favorite translation is the KJV, but I have to go into other translations. I got to go into the Greek and Hebrew. Those are important. So we definitely got to encourage our people to go into these words, and of course going into the words, but also the context as well, because words vary depending on the context as well. So that's the point I want to make. That's all.
Excellent point. Like in understanding going into the Greek language and the Hebrew language in regards to the scriptures, just understanding how them words are applied in those particular instances, just knowing how to divvy out those particular circumstances, so that definitely good point out.
I want to make another one too, just to kind of nail it too. If I'm not mistaken, I think somewhere I think Paul talks about, even if the angel of heaven, teaches you something different, you don't listen to that. Right. So, hey man, he said the angel of heaven, so it just shows you how much you got to really be girded in this thing and be secure, with the Most High God, and keep these laws, statutes, and commandments. Because, man, if somebody's teaching you something contrary to what Yahushua taught, because I'm pretty sure that's what it's going into. If anybody's teaching, anything contrary to Yahushua, you just got to reject it. And that's a hard truth that's hard for a lot of people to understand, because they even put Paul on a pedestal, like the way the brother Hurt was mentioning, how they put Yahushua on a pedestal, try to say he's teaching something different. So they do the same thing with Paul as well, at a big degree, man.
Yeah. Like a lot of people, it's funny you said that. Like I make the joke with some people that they truly look at Paul as a Deuteronomy 18:18 prophet, man. You know,
Hey,
because
kids, yeah, that's true.
it's like, yeah, like Paul, he came and he and it's crazy because Paul even said it. I think it's in First Corinthians where he says, I wasn't crucified for you. Like I didn't come and die for you. But it's like a lot of people.
And he was the least of the apostles too.
God, exactly. He says these things. He says all of these things, man. He admits, I think it's in the book of Galatians, the 2nd chapter, that Peter, John, and James were the pillars of the church, right? So
Mm-hmm.
Paul, he's not even purporting himself to be, the head honcho, but people will be like, well, Paul, like it's like, well, bro, like what about the Messiah?
Like he
What
had to take counsels too. Like Paul had a counsel in Acts 21.
I'm over here dying laughing.
He had a whole council in Acts 21. Like he's not the head honcho, man. And the thing is, but you got to understand though, like they have to put Paul on a pedestal because they're thinking that he's teaching what they want to bring out. Like he's making their point. So it's just like that's why they got to put him on a pedestal. They got to mention about all these mysterious revelations he had, right? Because you could philosophize off that that particular understanding, and you can take it anywhere you feel like it. You know what I'm saying? And especially like just how much wisdom Paul had is just like, I mean, they had to put him on a pedestal. They just got to be like, the Lord was just specifically dealing with him because unlike other disciples and other prophets and things, he gave Paul a different type of revelation. Like that's madness, man.
Yep. Excellent point. Man, that was a great comment, Brother Block. But let's go to the book.
Oh yeah, I saw it in the chat.
But Brother Pat, if you could you read Matthew chapter 7, verse 21 on down to 23, because this is going to be another place where the Messiah, he harps on obeying the instruction of God, and we're going to correlate it back to the so-called Old Testament. But you can read verse 21 on down to 23.
Book of Matthew, chapter 7, starting verse 21. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter into the kingdom of heaven. Only the one who does the will of my Father in heaven. On that day, many will say to me, Lord, Lord, didn't we prophesy in your name, and in your name cast out demons, and do many powerful deeds? Then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Go away from me, you lawbreaker.
God, and I think in the NLT it says, get away from me, you that break God's laws, right? Like I like how these these simpler translations put it, because again, like I think how the brother Ezra put it is no wiggle room. Like you can't play any games with it, because people will make their own. And I mean, shoot, they try to do it here also, but it's harder. But they'll try to make their own standard or definition of. I think the KJV says, "You that practice iniquity" or something like that. They'll try to make their own standard. Like, they'll be like, "Oh, he's talking to y'all law-keeping Israelites. Y'all are doing these works," and they'll say the works of the law, and then they'll say, you're still in iniquity. But if we get down to verse 23, and you can't play with any, because iniquity it just means sin anyway, right? But if we go to verse 23 and we just read it in a translation like this, just plain as day, just a lawbreaker, right? You can't play any game and say, well, yeah, that's talking about not having faith. Like you can't play any game like that, because the law, because of course faith is included in the law, but the law is not subject to faith only. It's not just have faith or belief. The law includes the instruction of God that's explicitly written in the so-called Old Testament, right? And the Lord said that you're not going to be able to stand in His sight. Like you're not going to be able to enter into the kingdom unless you're obeying his instruction, and unless you're obeying the Most High's instructions, excuse me, right? And you even see that in the so-called Old Testament, right? But you got a point, Brother Ezra?
Yeah, read that in the NLT as well.
God, that's a classic. It's the book of Matthew chapter 7 and verse 23 in the NLT. It says, "But I will reply, I never knew you. Get away from me, you who break God's laws."
Hey man, what law is that talking about?
God.
I had another point that I do want to add on to it as well. Just kind of going into like, the doctrine Yahushua was teaching in John chapter 7. Get that first, and then we're gonna get another precept to kind of put it together.
Hold on, brother Ezra, because that scripture said you who break God's law. Well, Jesus, he is God.
hey, that's a good point. But when you go to Nehemiah, the interchangeable, law of Moses and law of God. So technically, Jesus is teaching the law of Moses.
And the water to my brother Ariyah for and I'm gonna bring up that John 7, right? But the water to my brother Ariyah for bringing this up, because I meant to touch on this, right?
Mm-hmm.
When we read Matthew 7, 21 through 23, it makes mention that belief alone, or it shows that belief alone is not gonna be enough to enter into the kingdom. So like you'll have so-called Christians, they'll go to Romans 10 and 9, and they'll be like, confess with your mouth and believe that Jesus is Lord, right? They'll go there and they'll say that's what you need to do to be saved. But obviously more has to be done. Like you obviously have to do that, but something else as well. And that something else is obeying the rest of the Lord's instructions. You don't just just admit that you believe that Jesus is Lord and that's it. Now you have a ticket. You just maintain that belief. That's not what the scriptures teach. And Paul didn't even teach that. Like, people like I hate how people abuse what the Apostle Paul wrote about, because honestly speaking, the Apostle Paul, he only wrote about the long suffering of the Most High, and how he was merciful toward us, and how he was extending us the opportunity to repent. I think even in the book of Romans it said don't you understand that the grace of the Most High is to lead you to repentance? Roughly paraphrasing. That's what the Apostle Paul said, that, the grace is so that you can repent. It's not that you can not keep the law. Like, that's not what, Paul even taught. But again, like a lot of people, like I mentioned, and how, brothers will, continue to mention, we as a people, we've been indoctrinated with falsehood, right? But Block, you want to call?
Good point though.
I know, okay.
Very good point, because even with that being said, like you mentioned, like people saying, I gotta profess with their lips, Jesus is Lord, things of that nature. But the thing is, this is the same problem Yahushua had in Matthew 15. He says people honor me with their he honored God with their lips, right? So that was an issue God already had to begin with. And you read about that in the book of Isaiah. So again, he's still going back to the prophets, going back to the law, going back to the so-called Old Testament to prove his points, right? And you could play a game with that as well. Like, even when you tell a Christian about, the doctrine of discovery, when Christians came over here slaughtering in the name of Jesus, it's just like, oh no, they weren't Christians. But how can you say it? I mean, they professed it with their lips.
Mm-hmm.
You tell somebody that they're not Christians. You can't pick and choose. I mean, they confessed Jesus was Lord, right? They killed in the name of Jesus, right? So what's wrong with that?
How
are they not Christians?
Yeah, it's because like you set that standard, by saying you just gotta confess with your lips. So now you can't start to be arbitrary or like pick and choose, because I presented an unfavorable scenario, like even I don't really want to say his name on here, but the guy from from Germany that was doing what he was doing to the small hats, 40 years ago, or 60 years ago, right? Like there's information about him that purports that he was a Christian, but you speak to the average Christian, they'll say, no, he wasn't really a Christian. But it's like, well, but he didn't he profess with his mouth? Like, ain't that all you need to be a Christian? Ain't that all you need to be saved? Like, so it's again, yeah, that's definitely a great point that the brother Ezra brought out. But did you want something in John 7?
Yeah, I wanted where it talks about Yahushua said his doctrine is not his, is of the Most High. I wanted to bring the point.
God. This is the book of John, chapter 7, verse 16. Yahushua answered them and said, my doctrine is not mine, but his that sent me.
I get Proverbs 4 and verses 2.
Mm-hmm. It's the book of Proverbs, chapter 4, verse 2. And it reads, for I give you good doctrine, forsake ye not my law.
Right, that's that good doctrine Yahushua was saying that wasn't his. It was of the Father, which goes right back to the law.
Con, excellent point. So let's show that correlation. And the brother brought out a good point. So let's show another correlation to Matthew 7. Let's show it in the so-called Old Testament, right? Let's go to the book of Psalm, chapter 5. And brother Shar, if you could you read let me share it. It's the book of Psalm chapter 4. Chapter 5. You can read verse 4 through 5.
All right. This is the book of Psalms, chapter 5 and verse 4. Certainly, you are not a God who approves of evil. Evil people cannot dwell with you. Arrogant people cannot stand in your presence. You hate all who behave wickedly.
So, this is an example, of the Old Testament so-called teaching that the Most High will reject people that disregard. And that's the same thing that the Messiah said in Matthew 7, right? He said that, he's going to say, get away from me, you who break God's laws, as it said in the NLT. So again, like, this is just, example, another example of, how the Messiah, he taught what was in the so-called Old Testament. And we could show, many examples of this, because it's a fact that the Messiah taught what was in the Old Testament. He didn't come and teach his own doctrine as, the brother went into in John 7, but he taught what was in the scriptures. And what he did, what was brilliant was he explained or elucidated what was in the scriptures. Like, a lot of times I hear what's applied to him is Isaiah, when it says he came to magnify the law and make it honorable. I believe contextually that's talking about the messianic servant, right? So with that being said, if we believe that that messianic servant is Yahushua, then that's exactly what he fulfilled, when he came on earth, to do the work that the Father sent him to do, right? But if y'all brothers got any more points, I'll pass it to y'all. But that's what I have for tonight.
Man, beautiful lesson. All praise to the Most High. That's all I got, man. Beautiful lesson.
Same. I ain't got no more other points. I think we pretty much nailed it.
All praises.
Great lesson.
All praises.
And the water brother Ezra, for your input on the lesson. You're welcome anytime to the stage, brother Pat, brother Shaw, the water for the reading out.
No, I really appreciate you, brothers. I really appreciate it. I'm gonna be on this platform as much as possible. Just let me know whenever y'all doing it. The brother Aaron told me he's I think Tuesdays and Thursdays. So whenever I get the chance, Lord willing, I'll be on it.
Praises.
Well, Shalom Makim. Yahweh Shem Yahushua Barakatah.
Khan. And I'm about to close it out, man. We're gonna close it out with number 6 and 24 on down. The Lord bless thee and keep thee. The Lord make his face shine upon thee and be gracious unto thee. Let me pull it up because I was reciting it, right? But it said, the Lord lift up his countenance upon thee and give thee peace, and they shall put my name upon the children of Israel, and I will bless them. And with that, we're going to say Shalom.
Shalom, Makim. Shalom, family.
Shalom, shalom.
It ain't for everybody. 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 Yeah, many you call, but few get chosen. Matthew 22 and 14. My righteousness gonna exceed that of the Pharisees.